of UX design, you might find your niche as a specialist. A specialist dives deep into one particular UX design role, like interaction, visual, or motion design. Interaction designers, visual designers, and motion designers actually have pretty different jobs. Let me share a little bit more about each one of them, and some considerations when searching for these job openings online. Interaction designers focus on designing the experience of a product and how it functions. They figure out how to connect the user's needs and the business goals with what's actually feasible to build. I'm an interaction designer myself here at Google. Some keywords to look out for when searching for an interaction design job are user flows, wireframes, user interface mockups, and prototypes. If you excelled at creating your wireframes earlier in the program, you might want to pursue interaction design. Then there's visual designers. Visual designers focus on how a product or technology looks. They focus on things like iconography, typography, color, space, layout, and brand. If you've liked fine-tuning these design elements in your mockups and high-fidelity prototypes, this might be a good path for you. And last but not least, motion designers. Motion designers think about what it feels like for a user to move through a product and how to create smooth transitions between pages on an app or website. In other words, they use movement to convey an idea. They create interactions through transitions and animations. So if you liked playing with triggers and motion while creating your prototypes, that's the kind of work a motion designer might focus on. Depending on where you work in your career trajectory, you might have a depth of knowledge in one of these specific areas, or you might have generalized knowledge and skills in each area. When you're trying to find work in UX design, it's important to consider whether you want to pursue a generalist or a specialist role like one of these. My advice to you is to keep an open mind, especially for your first job and early on in your career. It's hard to know exactly what type of specialty you might want to pursue before you get some on-the-job experience. So cast a wide net. Alright, outside of these UX design jobs, there are a few other types of jobs that you might find during your search that I want you to be aware of. For example, you might find or search for jobs labeled UI designer. UI, or user interface designers, have similar responsibilities to visual designers. They're more concerned with the look and function of a digital product's interface and less focused on wireframing or information architecture. Some companies don't differentiate between UI and UX designers, so feel free to check out job postings for UI designers, read the job description carefully, and decide if you'd be a good fit for the role. In addition, you might want to explore product design. Product designers tend to work with both visual and interaction design and are responsible for figuring out how the whole product comes together. Product designers work together with the branding team, often defining the product's brand and marketing along the way. One more thing. You'll probably find job postings that simply list the position as a UX designer. That might mean you'd be responsible for any number of design tasks, from planning a button's location, to designing its shape and style, to making it appear as if it's being pressed. Be open to generalized roles like this in your job search, as they're a great way to learn a bunch of different skills. Later, when you've gained more real-world experience, you can reevaluate whether you want to transition into a more specialized role. Alright, you ready to check out some UX design job postings with these titles? Take a moment to reflect on the type of work you might want to do and if you'll search for a general or specialized title. Then, Start exploring what's available in your area. Have fun.
For me, participating in this program is really important. I've actually spent quite a lot of my career trying to educate non-design folks in some of the aspects of design. So to get to do this at a broad scale to folks who are actively engaged in building UX career is really important to me. I had a massive interest in UI. I know it sounds crazy, but I used to watch Star Trek as a kid, and I loved those interfaces they had, and they really got me hooked in touch technologies way before it eventually came out. So that kind of appreciation for good design and appreciation for, I guess, futuristic technology, combined with my general inquisitive nature, I think set me up well for this career. I actually had a slightly non-traditional path into UX. I did an undergraduate degree in software engineering and artificial intelligence, but I did my thesis on human-centered systems aspects. And then I got my first job as a programmer, but I was a scripting programmer, which was a bit of a surprise for me. So I was writing in Linux, so lots of black screens and white text. And I decided that I wanted to move properly into the field of UX. So I took a part-time master's degree in human-centered systems, or HCI. Because I had to make the transition from a more non-traditional role into UX, one of the things that I did as well as studying for my master's degree was try and build up a portfolio of work, kind of like what you folks have been doing in this course. So I helped out around the office, I designed posters and flyers, I revamped the websites when I saw opportunities to do that, just so I could build a body of work to help me apply for that actual first UX job. When I went for my first UX role, it was an internal role in the company that I was at, and they didn't have an interaction designer for their internal business systems. So I thought I would apply for it and give it a shot. And I had this portfolio of work showing that I could do some design work and do some web design and that kind of thing. But one of the requirements they had was to be completely fluent in HTML and CSS. I'm like, I kind of knew my way around it, but I wouldn't really call myself fluent in it. And thankfully, through luck and hard work in my portfolio, I managed to land the job. So I guess my advice is you can still build skills that you can learn for a role that you're applying to or that you've got. You can still learn new things as you go along. If you're new to Adobe XD, there's a plethora of resources that you can use to learn how to use the tool. I spent so much time in it just playing around. You can do all sorts of stuff in it. You can get plenty of resources online. You can download other people's files and pull them apart and see how they've made things. Also, XD updates every month with new features, so there's always something new to try out, and that kind of engagement keeps pulling me back in. I'm like, oh wow, this could save me a bunch of time. Let's go try that feature. So I really recommend you take advantage of those resources. My name's Dave. I'm a Senior UX Program Manager at Google.
Welcome back. Now that you've started to think about the type of UX design jobs you might be interested in, let's talk about some common career paths: internships, apprenticeships, freelancing, and entry-level jobs. Internships are a great way to start your career. An internship is usually a short-term role with limited responsibility. You often work closely with a supervisor to learn more about the industry that you're interning in. It's a fantastic way to get real work experience. Plus, an internship might lead to a full-time job in the future. Another way to start your career is with an apprenticeship. Apprenticeships provide paid on-the-job training to help you develop real skills. Apprenticeships are similar to internships because you work closely with an experienced professional, but apprenticeships have a longer duration, usually 1 or 2 years. You could also explore freelancing. Freelancers work for themselves and market their services to businesses to find customers. Working as a freelancer can help you gain experience on real UX design projects. A good way to get started as a freelancer is to offer your services to a small business or nonprofit. In exchange for your work, you'll receive a good recommendation and a project to include in your portfolio. You'll learn more about freelancing in the next course. And finally, the most common way to start your career in UX design is an entry-level job. Entry-level jobs are roles that do not require prior experience in the field. The skills and portfolio pieces that you've developed in this program will help you get started as an entry-level UX designer. Plenty of companies might be interested in hiring someone who's completed this program and produced a portfolio of outstanding work. During your job search process, you should also consider the type of company you might want to work for. Let's quickly review some common types of companies where UX designers work so you can keep these in mind while reviewing job openings. First, there are startups. A startup is a new business that wants to develop a unique product or service and bring it to market. Startups generally have tight budgets and few employees, so each person has to perform a variety of jobs and move quickly. If you're a UX designer at a startup or another small business, you'll likely be a generalist. Designers at companies with fewer employees get involved in many parts of the business. Working at a startup or small business can be stressful, but also very rewarding. You learn quickly and usually have a lot of responsibilities, so it can be a great way to launch your career. Another common place UX designers work is at advertising agencies. Advertising agencies are teams of creatives hired by clients to build marketing campaigns. Working at an ad agency is a lot like freelancing in that you get to work with a bunch of different brands. But you'll be employed by the agency instead of being self-employed, and you'll be a part of a team. Design agencies and design studios are another good option to consider. A design agency provides a one-stop shop for the look of brands, products, and services. They're usually more specialized than ad agencies because they focus on design and branding. Since design agencies work with multiple clients, you might not work on a project from beginning to end. UX designers at design agencies regularly move between teams and work on different stages of a product's development. You'll probably be a generalist and the only designer on a project. You'll be exposed to a lot of different industries and get to solve unique problems. One more option. You could work as a UX designer at a corporation like Google, Apple, Nike, or Amazon. Corporations and other big companies have thousands of employees working on lots of different projects. UX designers are typically specialized in their work and focus on one project from beginning to end. Working at a big company is a great way to learn about specialization within UX design. Plus, you get to learn from other experts. When you're looking for jobs, it's important that you have an idea of what you'd like to do. Maybe you're flexible and willing to pursue any type of job in UX. Or maybe you have your heart set on becoming a motion designer at a big corporation. Whatever your unique situation and interest, these are important factors to consider in your job search. So, there you have it. You now have a strong baseline of knowledge for your job hunt. You'll also want to narrow your job search with other details, like your preferred location or level of experience required. But we'll get to that later. For now, start exploring online and take notes of jobs that pique your interest.
Hi, I'm Kenny, and I'm an interaction designer at Google. An interaction designer helps make your products simple and easy to use. If you ever had a frustrating experience, an interaction designer tries to make those experiences better, intuitive, accessible. My favorite part of UX is that every day is different. No 2 days are really the same. I think one day I could be in research studies watching participants use our products or looking at the data to see what we can do next time or do better. Another day I might be heads down in designing, wireframing, or prototyping product, or thinking of high-level strategy. And then each week our team has weekly design critiques where we help improve each other's work. I think what made me really successful at my first role in UX was having a growth and learner's mindset. I remember during lunchtime I would always go to the local bookstore just to read the latest books on UX and design. Real growth and learnings happen not only when you fail, but when you do things that scare you. So to become the best version of yourself, embrace the uncomfortable, and don't be afraid to try different things. Getting into Google was a dream come true, but it didn't come easy. For the first 7 or so years after college, I applied to Google almost every year, and I didn't hear back at all. And it wasn't until a few years later I managed to pass the initial screening, and I got flown up to their offices up north in the Bay Area for a full day of interviews. But I did not get past that stage. I still continued working on my craft, joining a lot of startups, learning design, and eventually, a few years later, a recruiter reached out, and I went through the interview process again, and eventually got an offer. I wanted to keep going because, one, Google was a company that I admired and wanted to be part of. I use all their products and love using them. But I think also, if you ask any of the top, or who you think are top designers around here, they'll tell you that people get rejected all the time, even them. It's not always the right fit at the right time. But I know countless designers, including myself, who've been rejected from a lot of different companies. And so you just got to know that, it's part of the process. You have to keep working at it to improve your designs. I think what gets me out of bed in the morning is knowing that there are hard problems to solve that are going to make a person's life better. Whether it helps them complete their job, the task at hand, or just makes doing something easier, more intuitive, more fun. It's always eye-opening to watch people use the products you design. I remember one of the first times I was sitting behind a two-way mirror doing a usability test, and the participants were having a really hard time using this feature that I worked on. And one of the participants, out of the blue, just suggested a simple fix that would make it much easier. And so that kind of taught me that good ideas can come from anyone. You can be a junior designer or a very senior designer, but everyone has good ideas. And it really helped me emphasize, or helped me gain empathy for our users. UX has a huge impact on the world. I think we see it today when with just a click of a button you can get an Uber or Lyft and not have to do that awkward exchange of payments at the end. In the future, it might be self-driving cars that come pick us up. And the world has a lot of problems, hard problems, that need to be solved, whether it be in education, government, healthcare, climate change. So the next generation of designers are really going to have a huge impact on our world.
Now that you've determined the types of jobs and companies you're interested in pursuing, it's time to start your job hunt. There will probably be lots of online searching, networking with professionals in the industry, and asking for referrals from friends. So without further ado, let's get started. The first resource you might use to find a job is Google for Jobs, which is an enhanced feature of Google Search. You can type your job search terms directly in your browser's search bar, and Google will aggregate thousands of job boards and company websites to find the jobs that match your terms. From there, you can add filters to narrow down your search for your specific criteria, such as the type of position you're looking for, required work experience, and the location of the job. Another place to find job postings is on the websites of specific companies you might want to work for. Some larger companies even have their own websites dedicated solely to recruitment. Next, check out job postings on all-purpose job boards like Indeed, Glassdoor, and ZipRecruiter. These job boards have lots of job search functionality and filters. You can also upload your resume to the site to get matches tailored to your interests. In addition, you might want to explore industry-specific job boards. If you completed the first course in the program, you might remember learning about professional networking sites like LinkedIn, Dribbble, and Behance. LinkedIn caters to professionals in all industries and is a favorite spot for recruiters of all kinds, while Dribbble and Behance are more tailored to the UX community. These sites have their own job boards, where companies can post openings for UX professionals. You can also review the profiles of companies that post jobs. It's important to maintain your online profiles when you're using sites like LinkedIn, Dribbble, and Behance. Your work experience and portfolio will automatically be tied to whatever position you apply for, and hiring managers will expect to be able to review examples of your work. So be sure your online profiles paint the picture of who you are as a designer. And if you decide to pursue freelance work, there are freelance job boards too, which can be a great entry point for new designers. It's worth checking out all these websites during your search. Keep in mind, the job search doesn't happen entirely through job boards. For example, you could also try to find a job through professional networking at industry events. Attending networking events in person or virtually is a great way to meet new people, make connections, and learn about job openings. Industry events can be relatively small, like the local chapter of a larger organization or an event at your community's library. Or industry events can be really large, like an international conference. Either way, these events are an opportunity for you to meet UX professionals, learn about their jobs and companies, and demonstrate your interest in starting your career. To find events like these, check out online resources like Medium, Eventbrite, or Meetup for a comprehensive list and joining details. We'll share a few tips in the course reading too. You should also begin personal networking. Consider reaching out to your friends, family members, classmates, former coworkers, and managers about starting your new career in UX design. You'd be surprised how many times you can successfully make a connection with someone in the industry just by talking about work with people you already know. They might be able to connect you directly with recruiters in the field or suggest a group where these professionals meet, both online and offline. The idea is to make your interests known because you never know who others in your network might know. All right, now you have a solid understanding of where to search for jobs. Up next, let's explore how to analyze job descriptions and make updates to your resume. Meet you there. again. You've been thinking about the types of UX design jobs you might want to apply for, and you just learned about where to search for jobs. Now, in this video, you'll learn how to explore job descriptions and update your resume based on a job description. I'll share a few pro tips along the way, so let's get started. As a reminder, job descriptions explain what you do in the role you're applying for. When you review job descriptions, you'll want to pay attention to key terms. Key terms are important words that tell you the specifics about the job. To search for a key term within a job description, use Control F or Command F. This is known as the find command. If you're in a web browser and want to search all the text on a page, pressing Control F will bring up a search bar. Type in that search bar and you'll be able to locate the text you've typed within the page. A lot of what you've learned through this course will help you notice key terms that other beginner designers can't. For example, words like usability study, wireframe, prototype, visual design, and ideate can hint at what the role entails. Many people who are new to the field of UX design probably can't explain the difference between wireframes and prototypes, but you can. So this is something to highlight in your resume. That's my first pro tip. Use key terms from job descriptions in your resume. If a company expects you to build prototypes, you'll want to emphasize that you understand what this means and showcase your previous experience with prototypes. Keep in mind, key terms might also include soft skills like collaboration, presenting findings, or working remotely. These soft skills refer to how you get work done, rather than what you're working on. If there are certain ways you really like to work, feel free to search for those key terms and include them in your resume too. In addition to key terms, you'll also want to take note of the job requirements listed. Job requirements describe the expectations of the person who lands that job. It's often helpful to specifically mention some of these job requirements in your resume to show that you're a good candidate for the role. So it's similar to the first pro tip, but my second tip is to mention some of the job requirements in your resume. Alright, after you've dug into a job description in detail, you should analyze the key terms and requirements you've noted. How do the expectations for the role align with your experience and interests? Remember, you do not need to meet every single job requirement listed, but you should be comfortable and confident with the majority of them. Finding a job is a two-way street. As much as you want a company to hire you, you also want to make sure that you will enjoy and succeed in the role. So while you're analyzing the job description, determine if you're a good fit for the job. Now that you have carefully reviewed the details of the job, are you still interested in applying? Sometimes a job that seems perfect at first glance is less appealing after careful consideration. That's okay. Not every internship or job will be a good fit for you. But if a job interests you and you have some of the required skills, don't let the idea of a perfect fit stand in the way. Adapt your resume to that specific position and show the recruiter or hiring manager why you're a good fit for the role. Finally, let me share one more tip. Decide if the job will help you meet your goals. For example, if you're looking for a paid job, then an unpaid internship might not be right for you. It's okay to go outside of your comfort zone, especially for your first position. But you don't want to move forward with a role that won't help you meet your short-term or long-term goals, both personally and professionally. With all of this in mind, you are ready to review some job descriptions. The more you explore, the more you'll find. So be persistent and keep searching. At this point, you're ready to take a major step in the job application process, creating a resume. If you've never written a resume before, that's okay. Over the next few videos, we'll cover the entire process, from choosing a resume template to populating the resume with keywords from UX design job descriptions. We'll also discuss how resumes are structured, and we'll dig into what makes a UX designer's resume different than the standard resumes, from the layout to the typography. You'll get to apply the visual design principles you've learned in this program to your resume. To start, let's take a peek at a polished UX designer's resume as an example. Here, Emily lists her contact information at the top of the page. Next, she describes her education, including the completion of this certificate program. Then, she lists her work experience, like being a self-employed photographer and a sales associate. Finally, Emily lists her skills, including some of the skills she gained through this program, like working in Figma and Adobe XD. Your resume can follow a similar structure to this example, including your contact information, education, work experience, and skills. Sometimes other information, like awards or interests, are included, but those aren't required. The amount of information to include and the length of the resume can vary depending on the experience of the person applying. But most people who are looking for internships or entry-level jobs should keep their resume to only one page. This is because hiring managers have to read a lot of resumes, so they usually need to scan them quickly. They might not have time to read every detail of a multiple-page document. So your resume needs to highlight major accomplishments, just like your portfolio. One page with just a few items in each section is all you need to show your experience. Plus, when it comes to UX design jobs, your portfolio is the key to getting an interview. Though your resume might get you through to the recruiter, your portfolio is what a hiring manager or potential boss will focus on. So make sure the link to your portfolio is prominent within your resume and easy to type. Likewise, include links to your professional networking pages as well, like LinkedIn, Dribbble, and Behance. Recruiters will be interested to see your role in the UX design community. Finally, keep in mind that you'll probably have multiple versions of your resume, tailored to specific jobs you're applying to. Before you start building a resume, it helps to brainstorm your ideal job beforehand. And as you review job descriptions, you'll want to include key terms and requirements in your tailored resume, like I described earlier. Okay, are you ready to start drafting your resume? Let's go.
My name is Dane, and I'm a visual designer at Google. For an entry-level resume, it can be really interesting. You don't have a ton of UX experience once you're entering this UX job. The cool thing to remember is that for UX design, they want to see what separates you from others, what makes you different and what makes you unique. There's always a way to take whatever experience you have and focus on larger scale strengths. So it's important to remember that everything you do is still important. Any design background that you have, whether it be working on small projects for teachers or working on a commission or any freelance work while you're in high school, it's really okay to add that to your resume. One of my first resumes I had that I worked on all of the theater programs from high school. It wasn't a job, but it was design experience that I had and really wanted to feature. Even if it's not focused on specifically UX design, find ways to pinpoint the leadership opportunities that you've had. Did you have to focus on critical thinking in your job? Did you have to figure out how to work under pressure or work very well with a team? Or were you managing or leading a group of people within the company? All of that matters, as well as the tenure. How long were you staying there? For one of my early level resumes, I had a retail job on there that really doesn't apply to UX design at all. But what I loved most about it was the tenure. So I worked there for about 6 years. I did have a ton of I did have a ton of experience that was built there. So instead of saying that I just worked in retail, I focused on more leadership opportunities. I want employers to know who I am as a person through this one pager. So when it comes to making your resume stand out, you want to really focus on the design of it. So of course there are a ton of resume templates out there that you can use to fill in your content, and I highly recommend starting with one of those, but find a way to tweak it and make it feel like you. You want to develop your brand in a way that when an employer sees it, they say, whoa, this is this is different from all of the other pages that we've got. When it comes to prepping your portfolio, you want to make sure your resume is up to date, it matches your portfolio. So what I do is I check a bunch of different design inspiration websites to see what the latest trends are, what the latest styles are, and what is the latest software that people are using and experimenting with. And you might start to see now that things are becoming more 3D with more depth, and there's different software to accommodate for that kind of design styling. So if you're able to hop onto that trend and be able to add that software to your resume, that'll automatically separate yours from others. UX design is such a valuable role within every single company, and whichever company you end up at, you're going to have a huge impact as a UX designer.
I'm Tim. I am a UX recruiter supporting search and assistant specifically, but mostly everything in the Americas. When we're looking at your resume for design, there are a few things that I think really stick out. One is make sure it has a link to your portfolio because we really want to see that work. We totally understand that you may not have a ton of work experience, big scalable projects, all those sort of things, and that's totally okay, but we do want to see your craft at work. So think about volunteer experience, work experience that you've done in the past, experience from education, programs, certificates, anything like that can showcase your work, or even just doing some mock design exercises to show us your design process, how you think through design problems, your creativity, visual craft, those things that we can actually visually see and look through, even if it's not directly related to the work we're doing at Google or at the scale, that's totally okay. How you think about problems and how you approach your design is just as important as the end visual. Think about how you can take us through that journey from start to finish on the project. The second thing is being very clear about what you accomplished personally. Often we collaborate very heavily with folks in the work that we're doing, so specifying in your portfolio what you specifically accomplished on your own allows us to see your individual skill, your individual work, and what you can really bring to the table. So not necessarily just the job details, right? We don't need a job description of what you did, but we want to hear about the impact you made, how you collaborated, and what you actually accomplished in the role that sets you apart from other candidates. When preparing for a UX design interview, there's a few things that I really suggest. The first is think about your creative problem-solving process. Often when we work, we sort of know how to approach things because we've done it a lot or have experience with it. But in the interview, it's really important to be able to clearly and precisely communicate your process and how you approach things. what are my actual steps that I take when I'm doing things like problem solving? Step 1 may be ask clarifying questions. Step 2, figure out dependencies. Those sort of things are really, really important because it allows you to clearly communicate to interviewers your thought process in a concise manner. I also suggest doing the same thing with your design process. Think about in a very organized, understandable way how you approach design and the process that you follow, so it's very clear when you're communicating it to the interviewers and it doesn't jump around. Think through some of your most favorite projects and how you would captivatingly storytell what you did and really highlighting the impact, the end result, and what your work accomplished overall.
Welcome back. Now that you've written your resume, you're almost ready to start applying for jobs. But there's one last thing to know about your resume. You need to tailor it for every job you apply for. It's not enough to send out the same resume to every recruiter. You need to review the specific job descriptions for each position, even if you're only planning on applying for internships or entry-level jobs as a general UX designer. You'll need to customize resumes for each position. In this video, you'll learn how to update your resume for each job you're interested in. Think back to what you learned about the different needs for a UX design role at a startup, agency, or large corporation. The projects and tasks you do at these companies might be quite different. For example, a resume that emphasizes general skills in UX design wouldn't work if you're applying for a role as a motion designer. Instead, you might want to include specific skills and experience using animations and transitions. A fully remote job might need a candidate with digital collaboration experience, and a UX design job at a small company might need someone who's comfortable conducting research. All of these different jobs require carefully crafted resumes. So, how do you know what to include in each version of the resume? Start with the job descriptions. The descriptions for each job you're interested in applying for are a valuable resource when building your resume. Job descriptions clarify what the job responsibilities are, and they emphasize the particular skills you'll need to be successful. In an earlier video, I shared some tips for reviewing job descriptions. Here's where those skills come in handy. Each keyword is a flag for the hiring manager and software that will likely scan your resume before it reaches a human. Review the resume you've drafted so far. Is there any way you could rephrase your existing descriptions to make better use of the key terms from the job description of a role you're interested in? For example, this job description for a UX design intern states, you will communicate and test your ideas using prototypes that help others understand your intended design, synthesize findings from customer data to suggest improvements to the product, and/or suggest ways to capitalize on design patterns that delight our customers. Luckily, over the course of this program, you've built prototypes, synthesized data from usability studies, and revised your designs to make improvements. When describing the work you've completed in your portfolio, match the phrasing they use in the job description. When your resume has the same keywords as the job posting, hiring managers and the software they use will notice. You might even need to cut certain experiences based on whether they're applicable to the job you're applying for. For example, you might apply for a company that builds apps. In that case, you don't need to emphasize the work you've done on websites. It's worth including in your portfolio, but it shouldn't be central to your resume. Finally, When you're finished with the customized version of your resume, save a new copy of the file with the name of the company, job title, add it to your resume. Then, the next time you see a new position you're interested in, you'll be ready to apply.
You did it!